And we're live. G'day, guys. It's Down Under Sigma episode. Is it 5, Liam?
Five. Yeah.
People are still
5.
tuning in. We got 5 episodes down. We're close to 10.
Yeah, halfway there. Halfway.
How are you, mate?
I am great. I'm exhausted after a 5-day weekend playing Warhammer, but getting back in the swing of things. How about you, man?
Yeah, good. Back in the swing, printing terrain, preparing for Sydney GT. I am back in the groove. And funnily enough, something that's come up this weekend, obviously, is the Loon Curse. So I'm sure we'll talk a bit about releases coming soon.
Oh, yeah. But so excited.
We have some guests.
Yeah, we have some special guests. These guys, most people may know them or may have seen them from Australia, but some people may never seen them before. But yeah, they're pretty cool.
Who are they?
Yeah, who are they?
You do the intro.
So here we go. So we got Chris from Mortally Wounded, and
Aloha.
His partner in crime in Mortally Wounded, James Maybury, the best painter I know in the Death faction, in my opinion. But yeah.
Oh, you're too kind. Too kind.
Everything he paints is just so pretty. So yeah. And then also, yeah, Chris is my partner in crime with Sylvaneth, Flesh Eater Courts, and I think those are the only 2 armies we are matching at the moment. But yeah.
At the moment.
But yeah, so how about you guys give us a bit of a quick introduction of yourselves? Starting with Chris, since he was ready.
I was gonna pass it over to James, but sure, I'll start. Hi everyone, Chris Welfare. Hopefully some of you know me already from the Mortally Wounded podcast that me and James do. Obviously English, been here about 4.5 years, but big part of the Sydney scene. I think kind of one of the founding members with James as well. So yeah, been playing Sigmar since the start. Old world player originally, moved straight over, started completely new armies, didn't have anything here, but yeah, I've been playing the whole time. I'm a competitive player first and foremost, but I also like to not have a terribly shabby army on the table. So well, definitely not a skill painter, but I put effort in. Basing's probably my thing. Yeah, I basically collect pretty much everything. Some people would say I take filth lists. But yeah, I'd like to think I'm a nice guy on the table. I just want to play the game how it's meant to be played, but play it hard.
And for people who obviously subscribe to the channel, you've probably seen the Sylvaneth show where Chris and Liam talked Sylvaneth, and there's already Twitter about doing a second show with the potentially new book and new model. So may have to slide a brown paper bag of money to Chris to get him back on.
Yeah, it never cost me much to talk about Sylvaneth. So.
And your partner in crime, James.
Hey guys. My name's James. James Maybury. Been around since the earlier days of Age of Sigmar. I'm an old Bretonian player back in 8th edition. Predominantly a painter throughout most of my Warhammering hobby career. I don't know if you could call it a career, but
have you won something?
Have I won something?
Yeah.
I've got a few certificates and a couple of trophies sitting on my.
There's the profession. Like it's legit, right? Like
it's a career.
I'm rolling in it. Like you can obviously see all the money that all the cash monies that goes into this hobby. But So Bretonian play from sort of way back. Never really gone the gaming scene before. In 8th edition, I was more about just trying to get an army up. And then when Age of Sigmar dropped, I was very nervous about the future of the Bretonians. But I kept playing. Like we got a new compendium of rules, so I just embraced the whole thing. And as a matter of fact, like I embraced it fully. Like some of my favorite games I can remember without points and coming to that gentlemanly agreement about what we're going to take and how we're going to play a battle, and actually doing that and having an amazing time with it, and which I suppose touches on our sort of theme tonight of more than match play or a narrative sort of strain there. So yeah, have experienced the narrative pretty successfully in the past, but it's something I wish I could do a lot more often. Just Age of Sigmar and where we're at the moment is if I want to get games in regularly and hang out and see people, then match play is default setting for me at the moment. But when I can, I really love to play some good old narratives. So, but yeah, I kept playing Bretonnians for a bit, and then got into Death. I just always wanted to play Spirit Hosts, and now I've got 21 of them sitting in my cabinet. But yeah, it sort of grew from those first lot of Spirit Hosts, and I painted a Banshee and a Canwraith, and next minute I'm painting skeletons, and just kind of grew from there. And I painted my first big model, which was the Vampire Lord Zombie Dragon, and that was like my first sort of time I won a bit of painting recognition. I won the Monster May at the Sydney GW store, and kind of just really whet my taste for that kind of color scheme, and yeah, just went from there, and I've just built up a fairly sizable death army with all the different elements, so zombies and all that sort of stuff as well. Yeah, so that's me basically, and been involved in the tournament scene since I guess the earlier times. My work took me away from things for the last couple of years quite significantly, but now that I'm not away with work so much, I'm hit the ground running this year and got 3 tournaments under my belt. So here's to many more this year.
It's good to have you back. It was this weird lull when you disappeared for a while. So
yeah, yeah, I missed it terribly.
Just quickly, you do know Bretonnian does have a battle tome called Flesh.
I was going to say they're the most competitive army.
They got the most competitive army in the whole of AOS. They are sweet like candy.
Yeah, they're so hot right now.
Yeah, Liam's knee deep in the Bretonnian lore right now.
Yes,
I know everything about Bretonnian. That is why we did so well in trivia.
Yeah. And I can see we've got a whole bunch of people in the chat. Shout out to Andrew Bigwood as well, who, and I think this really ties in today's theme, which is around exploring the Age of Sigmar world outside of traditional match play. I think we probably get fixated really quickly in, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 point battles. So we really want to explore, how do you play this game outside of this traditional build, and playing narratively, playing match play, they're not mutually exclusive. And I think Bigwood is a great example. He came 4th recently at an event. James, Chris, you guys do really well. So it's like, how do we explore the realms outside of this traditional tournament? And I think we've got some good stuff to talk about.
Absolutely.
Now, Chris and James are one of the original. You got something to say? Because where I'm transitioning.
Yeah, definitely with the realm rules and stuff like that. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to come into for all the narrative stuff. So it helps.
Awesome. So now we're going to stop delaying because I've got a treat for everyone. Liam and I have been planning this out. Chris and James are super best friends, have been doing a podcast for years. These guys traveled together. In fact, they kicked off the Sydney travel scene by going up to Aussie GT the very first year. These guys are BFFs. And Liam and I wanted to test to see how well they actually know each other. So we've hand-selected about 8 or 9 questions.
Yeah, 8 or 9.
So I'm going to ask these questions, and we're going to see how well each person knows their other. So I'm going to start with Chris. Chris, where is James from?
Shit.
That's the best way to start.
I want to say his family's down from the Southern Highlands, but I think that's Sam.
That's my wife, for people who don't know. Oh, come
James,
on.
where is it? Where are you from?
Where is it?
Where are you from?
I'm from Sydney. But from the northern beaches of Sydney. Grew up in the northern beaches. Yeah. That was where I had my kids. Childhoods, but I haven't got any kids. That's where I was a kid. And then, but most of my adult life lived sort of like in the inner west of Sydney, and lived in the eastern suburbs for a while. But yeah, a Sydney person through and through. Yeah.
Just quickly, I love it how Chris knew where your wife was from, but not you.
So James,
that's because I talk about it a lot. Probably I don't really talk about Sydney much.
Yeah.
So James,
Well,
what's Chris's favorite song?
Favorite song?
Yeah, favorite song.
Oh, the Mortally Wounded podcast theme song. Obviously.
What is that song? What is that song?
Judgment Day's coming.
Yeah, it's Judgment Day.
All right, Chris.
That's a pretty hard question. I don't even know my favorite song.
Yeah, well, I know, like Perry Farrell,
Who?
Jane's Addiction.
This is going horrible.
We're gonna get 0.
Yeah, no.
Chris, what's your favorite song at the moment?
Oh God, I don't even know.
We don't talk about anything but Warhammer,
Yeah,
and sometimes about family. Sometimes.
All right, well, Chris, what's James's favorite movie?
Oh God. I don't know. I don't know. It's going to be like, like National Lampoon or something like that.
James?
Oh no, sorry, Chris.
What is it?
Well, the first thing that's come to mind is probably Lord of the Rings trilogy.
I was going to say probably Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, just at the moment, like that's probably the first thing that comes to mind is like a general overall all time. That stems from the books too.
So, James, do you think Chris is a morning or a night person?
He's a morning person, definitely. Yes.
Now, just quickly, is that from what you've based on the trip that we just had?
No. Just Chris is an early riser. I know that's how he structures his life.
Chris, are you a morning or a night person?
I am now, but I wasn't previously. Since Australia, yes. So that's fair.
Yeah, fair. Cool.
So, Chris, Liam, you asking one?
I was going to ask one.
Right, go on.
So, Chris, if James could be any animal, what would you be and why? Like, what would he be and why?
A fucking drop bear.
Oh, God.
Because he's cuddly, but he'll ruin people.
I like it.
James, what would it be?
If I was an animal or if Chris was an animal?
Well, but I guess I want to see how close he was. But
yeah, no, I'll go with that.
Yes, they got one. They got one.
1-0. As Big Wood said, you guys are on fire. Who is the better cook between you both?
Oh,
I would have said me. I don't know.
I've eaten your food. It's pretty nice. And have I cooked for you? I did. We've always.
Yeah, I've had a barbecue. It's usually takeaway, but yeah.
Yeah. Pizzas.
I'm pretty sure I cooked for you guys last week at
You did.
Because I was playing a game and everyone was already hounding me for taking 8 hours. So
it's true. Chris took 8 hours to play one game.
8 hours to play 2K game.
But if I wasn't playing, I would have been the one cooking.
I'd have to concede Chris is probably the better cook by virtue of him cooking more frequently at home. I do cook at home, but not as much as my wife does. So, yeah.
Okay, so James, what's Chris's next army and why? And then Liam, you get the last question.
Yeah. Fuck, I don't even know that.
Well, pick one. James, what do you think Chris's next army is going to be and why should it be that?
Next new army or recycling into a previously used army?
Let's say a new army, like he's something that he's not currently playing with.
Slaanesh.
Why?
Because it's new and it's going to have a whole bunch of new cool rules, and I think he'll be able to find some kind of sweet kick-ass list in there that will lead the way with the meta.
Chris?
Liam's reaction knows that's wrong.
Yeah.
No, Slaanesh, no. I'm not buying any new armies, so that's kind of harsh. It would be Nurgle, probably.
Now, I was laughing because I know that Chris's display board is painted in 3 colors, not 4, because his least favorite chaos god is Slaanesh. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think James is just trolling Chris.
Potentially.
Liam, what's the last question?
So, Chris, what is James's least favorite faction and why? What's the one army that he's probably least going to get into?
You probably should know this.
I'm pretty sure we had a conversation about this over the weekend.
Stop prompting him.
Yeah, Nurgle. He hates Nurgle.
Yes.
He literally hates Nurgle because he finds them disgusting.
All right, chat, how did we go? I feel like they got 2, 3 right, maybe.
Here's another question for Chris, though. What is one army that James is considering getting into, though?
Slanesh.
There we go. Claps for them. Yay!
All right, so
They are literally the opposite of each other.
Yeah.
all right,
We're
so
a compliment.
look out for the
We
divorce
compliment.
podcast coming up.
Yeah. I'm gonna go solo.
Might see a merger of Shadowhammer and Chris, maybe. I don't know. James and Deacon start a podcast.
Oh, that's a
I
good
don't
idea.
know. The Lords of Death.
Oh man.
All right. So it's a bit of fun. We kicked off. I think we, got a little bit to know of Mortally Wounded. Before we get into the topic, I wanted to find out. Obviously, we've had a big week in Warhammer. We've had Border Wars. We all four of us played in Border Wars. We've had Slanish get pre-released. We've got the Loon Curse come out with Sylvaneth and Gloomspite. Fire Slayers have kind of started hitting the tournament tracks with Andrew Wright kind of taking out BlizzCon. What do we think, guys? Whew, what a week.
Pretty
Yeah,
cool.
there's a lot going on.
Yeah. Well, Liam, you're saying you're writing lists with you're writing your Sylvaneth lists already. So is that you're forgetting about Slanesh now, or?
So pretty much, this is really annoying. So I was super like I've had 3 or 4 Slanesh lists written up, all with a similar idea, and then literally Monday ruined my plans. It was just like, cool. Well, there goes a new hero, and also the fact that it's also, and I've been asking for this. Even like I think even in the Sylvaneth episode, I said I would really love to explore more of like the God of Kurnoth with Sylvaneth. So the fact that they said, "Oh, this is a Kurnoth champion," I was like, "Well, fuck, there goes my money."
How many boxes you gonna buy?
I'm looking at 2 boxes, two regents, and I'll do 2 units of 10 tree revs, and I'll also have 2 Kurnoth hunters, 1 with bows and 1 with swords. So yeah. So if anyone needs some squigs, but
Name's your man.
yeah,
Liam's your guy. Do you hook up?
I'll literally be like squigs for days. But Slanesh is still in it. Like I am looking at my Slanesh right now, and I still want to do a 9 fiend list and like a low body count Slanesh list is what I want to do. That's move fast. At the moment, I'm really liking low body count, especially playing Gristlegore. So, yeah.
Mortally Wounded. What do we think of the releases?
I love that that new squig boss. He must be the Loon King himself.
Yeah.
It looks amazing. Like that new model. I love it.
It's a massive. It's such a big difference from the Finecast Loon boss on. Yeah, it's chalk and cheese.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite model out of them. Out of all of these, the new ones that have come out this week. And those Sylvaneth look fantastic too. Like that guy with the like that sort of the skull face with the big horns coming up and stuff. Like he looks pretty beastly as well. It's
a very Wanderer's mask though, so it's a bit odd for me. I really like the model, but it makes me curious as to where they're going to go with a new book. Like I'm wondering if it's going to be almost like Gloomspite, where they took a lot of reasonably sized factions and made one ginormous faction. Whether they might actually just, rather than give Wanderers a book, just roll Wanderers into a whole new kind of tree folk type battalion. Maybe that mask is a sign that they'll roll that in, because the rest of the model looks like Sylvaneth, but that mask is definitely Wander-esque. So,
and there has been some rumors that potentially Wanderers will get bundled in. So I don't know how much truth's in that, but maybe
It'll be interesting. Like I'm looking at the mask right now, and yeah, it is a bit Wandery, but like at the same time, it does have a shape of like a Kurnoth Hunter Huntmaster. If you look at the Huntmaster model, the horns are very much similar. It's just that mask is the only difference. However, though, the shape of the head is very similar to a Kurnoth Hunter. So it does represent the god of Kurnoth.
Are Wanderers kits pretty new? Are they kind of like, are they out of date? Like I haven't really looked.
I think they were before end times, but still relatively new for them.
Yeah, they're probably, I don't know, they're probably about 7 or 8 years now, maybe.
Yeah.
It's about 8th edition, 7th edition kind of model.
Yeah. The wings are beautiful. Like, it's so weird to say that, but those wings on that model is just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah.
And can I just say that the paint job for both the Loon Boss on the Squig and that model there is doing the model so much justice. Like, it really pops quite a lot.
Absolutely.
So the Heavy Metal team are doing a killer fucking job.
Awesome. And what were our highlights of Border War? So all four of us traveled down to Albury to play in a match play event. Someone here may have won something. Some other people may have been nominated for things. Is there a... All right, Chris has got to talk. Chris, talk.
That's my highlight.
Yes.
Whoop, whoop. I went for the sword and I came back with the sword.
You're lucky that I didn't take it because I didn't really want to put it on a plane.
Yeah.
That was the only reason why you won it, because I didn't want to take it on the plane.
It's almost as if I planned for it by driving home. Yeah.
You almost stabbed me with it when you sat down as well. I was like, what the hell?
It was fine. It was fine.
So what were our highlights? James, what was our highlight?
Highlight for me was probably when Nagash he just threw out a fair few hand of dust through the tournament. So it took me a bit to get warmed up into him, but he hand of dusted off 2 Frostheart Phoenixes and Archaon in one particular game, and 1 Enlightened. I feel like there should have been more, but he got dodged a lot, and I was still trying to figure out how to use the spell portal, and I made a few mistakes. But that was probably my highlight. Yeah, hand of dusting Archaon off the board was a real relief.
Liam?
I know what my biggest non-highlight was, which was getting paired up with Chris, which made me lose my chance of getting that sword, but oh well. But my biggest highlight would probably be, I don't know, just hanging out with the Melbourne crew and the Albury crew, pretty much like people that I don't get to see often or get to like chat too much, because like everyone has their own little group. So it's cool that like everyone's in the same space and you get to like move around and chat. That was probably my highlight. But another highlight would probably be killing 3 Great Unclean Ones in 1 round of combat. That was good.
Boom.
That was real good.
That's bad. It's bad.
Chris is freaking angry.
Me and Liam were talking about that in the car home, and he was like, "Yeah, no, I did good," and I was like, "I'm not sure you understand the odds of that. It was not a smart decision." I was like, "It's basically like at Avengers: Infinity War, where Doctor Strange says, I went forward and viewed 14 million versions. How many did we succeed in? 1. That was Liam's 1. That should never have happened."
But aren't we glad that he did?
Yeah.
I was impressed. Chris was not happy. He was like, "You should not be able to do that."
I was just like, you shouldn't think that was a smart tactical decision, because it probably should not have happened. But
Now, before we get into Chris's highlight, we've got a request that when you had the sword at Border War, you had done something for the crowd. I want you to put it on the internet right now. So, Chris, over to you, my friend.
Do I need to zoom out? Okay.
You don't have to zoom out. You just...
By the power of Grayskull, I have the power!
He-Man.
Is it really bad? Is it really bad, but I have no idea what you guys are on about?
Oh, you're such a millennial.
How do you watch so much anime and stuff like that and not know He-Man?
It's not my thing.
Born in the 90s, mid-90s, I'd say.
Yeah, I'm a 95 get.
Yeah, right, we're going to get a bunch of hate mail because Liam doesn't know.
Even I hate you, and I'm not that much older.
So, Chris, what was your highlight?
Other than the sword, like, it was just an awesome weekend. As Liam said, hanging out with people, getting to chat. For me, I was probably the most relaxed I've been playing at an event. I had practice games with the list, which helped massively because, to be honest, I don't normally get many practice games in. But probably proudest moment was against Charles Black, the Daughters of Cain list, because it was a really, really strong list. And I played really well. Like, not to toot my own horn, but there was some things that I set up that were really smart in terms of sacrificing units to pull him out of his buff ranges for the next turn and things like that. That meant I was able to just pull his army apart, like not attacking 2.9-inch tagging 30 Witch Elves, not attacking them, like not piling in so I didn't have to attack, taking a hit back all the way down to 2 models to then regrow to pile in with a Dead Watch in my hero phase because they had Martyr's Sacrifice on, because it doesn't work in the hero phase, it only works in the combat phase. And I would have killed myself if I'd attacked in the combat phase. So doing that, taking the hit to then take them out in the hero phase so their buff didn't work, I was pretty pleased with myself.
Love it. And I think my highlight, while I got to play, so I had two real highlights. One was playing Danny Paints with his free guild. So getting to see the free guild on the other side of the fence, which was really cool. And it's such a beautifully painted army.
Now, what are your thoughts on free guild shooting?
I like it. It reminds me why I really like it. And I'm inspired to come back probably earlier than I wanted to. So, I wanted to give it a good solid rest, and I'm now itching to bring the free people back. But and the scary thing was Danny doesn't run the same type of army. He was running very MSU, so I could sustain the small amount of damage he was putting through with the shooting. While, as we know, I like my large blocks of shooters. So, yeah, got some ideas. And then the other highlight was when Ken, with his Deepkin, charged me, sideboarded me with a bunch of eels, and I blocked them with some fanatics. He only killed 2 fanatics from the electric charge, which I thought was odd. It shouldn't have happened. And then my fanatics killed his eels, and my colossal squig ate some eels, and it was very odd that only 2 fanatics out of 5 died from the 6 zaps.
Damn.
Yeah.
Those are some strong ass fanatics.
Yeah, very, very, very lucky. So, but overall, really good weekend. Big props to Travis and Adam for running a great event. So,
and Anthony, you got the
best destruction.
No, I got runner-up best destruction. Andrew Bigwood got
he took out first.
Took out first. James, you got runner-up best painted. So I think overall a good weekend for all.
Felt good for that recognition, because I'd really busted my ass to get that army painted in time for the tournament. So I took a week off leading up to it and to make sure everything was up to scratch. And I was literally painting 12 hours a day or more.
And he was painting the day before. He literally, when he arrived to the Airbnb, I came in and he's just there like basing chain rust, doing his. I was like, okay, I'm leaving James alone.
Hey, I'll be with you in a sec. Just doing this.
Right.
No, there's some really, really high hobby, which was great. So, really interesting armies. Chris Cousins had this orc themed Carrigan Overlords. You had Nick Cohen with his amazing Black Coach coming through a Realm Gate. You had obviously Danny Paints, and Andrew Bigwood had his amazing ogre kind of combined force. It was just like really high standard.
Had the pleasure of playing Andrew again. We grudged each other for the first round. So it's good to play again, Andrew, and beautiful army. It was just a great way to start off the tournament. And you got that win, so we're at 1-1 now. So we'll have to grudge each other again.
Can I just say, looking at his list, I still don't understand how it works. But he came 7th or 6th.
Came fourth.
Came fourth.
Yep.
Can I say that's the highest that I think destruction has been.
It's a strong list, and it's like those ogres just put out so much damage, and there's so many big threats you got to deal with. Like I killed the giant in the game, but it took it took a lot to get that thing down. But the rest of it just could not withstand the amounts of damage he was putting out.
Yeah, like honestly, kudos to him, because destruction statistically should not be doing well, but the fact that he came 4th, killer job with a list that no one has ever seen before. So it's awesome.
Yeah, it was odd. It's a very odd. I recommend anyone check out the lists. You look at it and you just scratch your head like, how on earth does this work? But
it works clearly.
Yeah. But Andrew being a narrative player at heart, and he always writes a story and a theme for all of his lists. And to see that win coolest army, get 4th, best destruction, like just cleaned up, took some names.
It was killer. But yeah, also we had some cool stuff. It was like Borders was cool. Like we had some people, it was like their first tourney. Like I'm pretty sure one guy from Bendigo, he just turned 18 the day before the tournament. So like he was like having a great time just drinking, hanging out. And then we had like people like Jordan, who came first tournament ever, came second.
With Nurgle.
But his Nurgle's beautifully painted as well. Like it's just amazing. So it was really cool. It was awesome hobby standard, like above with most people. Most people's hobby was like definitely like just way above than usual, which was cool. So yeah,
So we're kind of on the cusp of the topic of the week, and kind of James alluded to it, which is around narrative. And this isn't the narrative show, but it's this is very much, I think, the topic that I want to explore today is really how do you play Age of Sigmar outside of those 18 match play scenarios? And yes, there's even 2 in Malign Sorcery, but no one really uses them. But there are so many other different ways to play from. And maybe I shouldn't ruin the Christmas present, but there are lots of different ways. And I think we get fixed often in match play. We get fixed at those 2,000 points or 1,500 point armies. So I think you guys have really good experience, and I want to start picking out how do we start playing this game outside of match play. You guys up for it?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Cool. And you guys obviously picked for very good reasons that we'll find out very soon. So let me throw the starting question is, what are the other ways to play Age of Sigmar outside of match play?
So you got open play, which is probably the most rare, I'd say, which is throw anything, any concept of points or balance of fair, kind of evenly matched armies out the window. And it's just whatever you want. Grab your models, get to the table, and just head to head, whatever you want. You can literally, it's open. You can do anything you want.
so that's like what AOS was at first, correct?
Yeah, pretty much. Like the open play concept, I think is really good if you're just getting into the hobby and you've just got a few models. You've got your first get started set, and you just want to have a game and start learning the mechanics. So you can just go, okay, you've got to get started box. I've got to get started box. Let's just put the models down and let's learn how to play this game and just have some fun rolling dice and just sort of I think it's a good tool to help establish, like, just to do those casual sort of throwdown games with a brand new person who doesn't know anything about Age of Sigmar. I think that's probably, in my opinion at the moment, would be probably the best way to approach it from the start with a new person.
Yeah.
And it was the default setting when Age of Sigmar first came out, which I think, there's a lot of different views on it and on how that affected the game. And my personal experience was I just I had an open mind for it, and really kind of it was quite refreshing to not be restricted by a points system that had become so entrenched. And I know a lot of people would strongly disagree with me, but for me, it was a real positive experience. Just it actually had that engagement with to have an engagement with somebody and to actually discuss what you want to get out of the game. And I think it works really well if you're doing like a like, say, a campaign, just a campaign between 2 of you. You might be, like, for example, I'll just draw from my own experience, and that was I had a friend who was a bit on the fence about coming on to Age of Sigmar, and so I'd say, okay, well, let's play a game of 8th edition, and if you beat me, you decide what game we're going to play next, but if I beat you, I get to decide. So after a couple of games of 8th edition, I got the win, and I said, all right, we're playing Age of Sigmar now. He's like, okay, and so then we just decided to just have the armies we already had and build on it from there, and we created a scenario. We drew from the different scenarios that were available in those earlier times, and we bolted on a few different rules to kind of fit what was happening to tell the story of the next sort of phase. And it was a real collaborative, and we had rules where, like, basically it was my Bretonians versus his Beastmen, and we had these rules where every turn he could bring on another one of his units from the back. So it's just created this like simulation of a rolling tide of beastmen charging at this fortress that we'd build up. And like all my peasants were on the walls, and that we sort of came up with different sort of buffs for their saves and things like that, just to make them a bit more durable and to create that sort of a bit more of a realism, I suppose you could say. So we kind of bolt on these things, and we had rules where from turn 3 onwards on a 4-up, a unit of knights could charge from the side from the side or something like that. So it was all about trying to recreate a fun, like almost like cinematic experience on the battlefield. It was just about the Bretonians trying to hold out in this fort to the last man. And the victory conditions were I had to have at least one of my models, my original deployed models, left on the board by the end of turn 5 to win a victory. And so it came down to the last turn. Like there was giants climbing over the walls. King Lewin came in at one point and slew a giant. There were knights fighting. There was like beastmen climbing over the walls. All my army was dead with the exception of one peasant trebuchet operator, like one of the trebuchet guys. And I just like was running him in the other direction. And my mate sent his harpies at him, charged him, fluffed all his attacks, and that was it. Game. Won the game based on this one peasant surviving. But it was probably the most. I've talked about this before in different podcasts in the past, but it's something I always refer back to because that was just such an epic feeling and such a great experience. And it had no points. It was narrative. It was, I suppose, technically open play, and we created an amazing experience. So I think. If you've got an open enough mind and you want to just try something new and do something a bit different, and you have somebody who's of the same mindset, I don't think it's something that works with people who are just meeting for the first time. I think that's why points are really important and are a really good part of the game because it adds that built-in structure, and so you can get up there and just have a you can write your list and you have restrictions so it's not too overblown. It's not as open to abuse, but I think. Yeah, so there's a place for every style of play in the game, and I think they do intermix and intercross with each other, as you were alluding to earlier, Anthony. Like they're not mutually exclusive. So you could have an open play game that has points. So you could say, let's play a 2,000 point open play game with no restrictions on your army. So you just have a 2,000 point limit, and then whatever you like, no battle lines, whatever. You can make it do whatever you like. So there's that kind of approach. But I think, it sort of crosses into narrative as well. Like narrative is all about telling that story, and there are scenarios available to tell those stories. And I find a lot of the objectives that you have to achieve in narratives are more sort of like, for example, what comes to mind is like the ritual. I don't know if anyone's ever played the ritual battle plan. It's basically where one side is the ritualist, and they're conducting this ritual and a sacrificial point at one end of the board. Then you've got the invaders, and their job is to stop the ritual. And so you're coming in and you've got to defend and fight off, and you roll a dice for the ritual, and it has to get up to 20 over 5 turns and stuff like that. So that's sort of different mechanics in victory conditions. And it's more of a, you're creating a storyscape about you've got to go rescue our general or whatever, or you've got to go rescue the damsel in distress or whatever it might be. And it adds that extra layer of, I suppose that's what narrative is, I suppose, like you're adding those extra layers.
Yeah.
And that totally integrates into match play as well. Like, so the way people write their stories for their armies, like Andrew's an example, like there's a story embedded into the army itself. And I think that's like one thing that can be overlooked sometimes in the hobby, but we're all in it for different reasons, and it's not taking away from what anyone else wants to do and how they do it. But it all depends on the individual and what their needs are and how they want to approach the game. And Age of Sigmar has something for every type of player, I think. And if you're kind of in match play and you're kind of feeling like, I want, like, there's got to be more to this, or you're feeling a bit dry because it's just the same 18 scenarios all the time and things like that, I would really encourage you just to try out some different battle plans that aren't in the match play lexicon, and just try something else out, try a different way of approaching the game, and you might find that you're pleasantly surprised and have a lot of fun. But like between tournaments, when you don't have to practice scenarios or something, let's go, okay, let's play a siege battle or something. Let's just do something different.
It's interesting. It's interesting you say that, because only today on Twitter I saw some people claiming a feeling of burnout where they've been going to tournaments, and there's a feeling that the game may be bloated with a lot of different rules and lots of just people aren't completing games. But the reality is that that's just one area of this game, and there are rules that allow us to play outside of match play. Playing in the land of Gur and having that random monster. I think it's in the core book. It used to be in the General's Handbook. I think it's now in the core book. You can play a siege. There are rules on sieges. There are rules on these multi-man triumphant treachery battles where it could be, and we've done this before. I think, Liam, you were in one of these games where there were six players, where it was a small force for each of us, and there's these amazing mechanics where I can interrupt an
Triumph and
opponent,
treachery.
even if I'm not in combat with them. I can interrupt them and kind of mess them up. And then you've got things like the Firestorm campaign, which is a series of ongoing battles. So there's so many different ways to play outside of this tournament match play setting. So I think you've both kind of given us a good example. What drew you guys to play outside of match play, or even just outside of this the traditional way of playing? Like, what's the incentives? What drew you to this way of playing?
For me, even as someone that would consider themselves definitely kind of a very much a competitive Age of Sigmar player, what draws me to the game ultimately is the universe that it exists in. It's like I like the lore. I don't read every single book. I don't necessarily grab a battle tome and read all of the stories in it, but I still like the fundamental kind of building blocks that make this game of there's all these different factions. There's these, like, at the end of the day, it's a fantasy game. You've got all these fantasy races, which are just becoming more and more fantastical compared to how they were in the old world, like where it was your typical kind of, I guess, Tolkien type races of elves, dwarves, etc. Yes, they still exist, even though they've been kind of recreated somewhat into Dwarden and things like that.
And misspelled.
You now get these new ones that become even more kind of fantastical. And you've always had all the Chaos Demons, which were much more kind of high fantasy, I guess. But now with things like the Ideneth Deepkin, it was a completely new take. Using all these kind of sea creatures. And I think that was one of the first armies that I saw that I was just like, wow, like this model release is incredible. And it's just, that's what really ultimately draws me, is the models for the game, and then just the background for the armies. I mean, to me, the fact that all of the kind of new armies get a scenery piece and they're starting to get endless spells and things like that, that really sets the theme and the tone of that army. And that to me is a form of narrative. Like, I know that if I play Khorne, I'm kind of going in that bloodlust, crazy kind of warrior, love, like worship skulls and all that sort of thing. I'm not just thinking I'm red dudes that run forward. Like Nurgle, I'm green dudes that walk slowly. Well, actually probably run forward faster than anyone else. But like, it's the fundamental game that we play is narratively based as far as I'm concerned. And so I do enjoy that. I like the structure of matched play in terms of being able to be on a reasonable level with someone I've never met. And I also, from a brain stimulation point of view, like the list building, number crunching aspect of the game. Like, that's what I get a kick from in terms of match play. But there's still that fundamental enjoyment of the big fantastical universe that it exists in. Like, I love all the realms and things like that. And I'm always keen to explore how much of those elements you can include in a game, but while still giving people that semblance of, I guess, a balanced experience. Because sometimes, like, it's not going to be fun if someone plonks down 5,000 points versus your 1,000 points and you just go, okay, let's play evenly, because everybody knows the result of that. So that's where, sure, you can do that kind of open or narrative where maybe one person does have 1,000 points, but it gets to keep coming back and things like that. So it's kind of endless attacks, strikes and things like that, where you can use mechanics to balance uneven forces. But generally, I think you get a more enjoyable play experience if there's two roughly evenly matched armies that are then competing over this narratively based objective. And even the General's Handbook match play scenarios, they still have a semblance of some sort of narrative of what you're fighting over. It's not like it's a chessboard and this just goes here and this goes here and this is it. You've got this narrative of, okay, you've got these two armies that are meeting and you need to hold these two objectives, or you need to hold like these places of power with these certain characters and things like that. So, I mean, for me, I like match play, and that's the setting I choose to play in. But if match play was boring and didn't incorporate this fantasy element, then I wouldn't play the game. So
it's interesting you say that,
everything narrative.
Because like when I think about this, because you raise a really good point, is like, let's say you're playing Gift from the Heavens, something's dropping from the sky, and at the basics of the game, we've got to fight over this objective. But what is it? What is this objective? is it a particular material that would change the army that I'm building and empower me to fight off the beasts, or could it be something that I could sell to the Caradron overlords, and all of a sudden, there's a narrative that could be, you know what I mean? Like, at its core, yes, we're just playing for a objective.
It's just a token on the board if there's nothing attached to it, isn't it? Like,
but like we could. Sorry, go on.
Because I'm pretty sure there's some some scenarios where they kind of describe what the objective is fought for. Like, for example, Gift of the Heavens. I think that at first when it got released, it wrote a small paragraph narrative of the skies are artifacts are falling down and stuff.
Yeah, they're all still there.
Yeah.
Every match play mission has a little paragraph at the start in italics, which sets the scene. And most people gloss over it, but it's still there. Like, the game fundamentally is based on world building, and at the end of the day, Games Workshop wouldn't be around if they didn't create these amazing worlds that draw people in with these incredible models that make people feel like they're living this kind of fantasy element. Like, there's a reason people choose to play this over lots of other, I guess, more boring kind of games. So
and I think for me, when the rubber really hit the road was when I think it was Phil Kelly to put out the video about 12 to 18 months ago about the realms.
Yeah, that was really good, that one. Yeah, it's really well described it. Yeah.
Do you want to give for the people who haven't seen this video, and maybe I should put it in the show notes below, what was the video, and why should somebody watch it?
It's a video that in hindsight would have been better if it had come out right at the beginning of Age of Sigmar, to really get people's head around the concept of the Mortal Realms and stuff like that. When it came out, it was yes, that describes it perfectly. It describes how the Mortal Realms interact with each other, what they're about, how they came to be. It was just a real great rundown and it made sense. And it just, I think, like you were saying, Anthony, it gave people traction in the Mortal Realms and how to understand it and apply it to their own armies and laws and whatnot, and where they fit in and where their army fits in to everything. So yeah, good work that it came out. Yeah, definitely. But I think it just needed it sooner, I think. But I think perhaps they were still trying to figure that out themselves. And so it is what it is. We're here now, so that's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, they came from, the old world had existed for 40 years, right? When Warhammer started, the old world didn't have 40 years worth of lore, right? Everyone compared this brand new setting to, a game or a universe that's had 40 years worth of stories to build it, and said, it just doesn't have anything compared to the old world. Well, yeah, the old world it wasn't built in a day. It took 40 years. So, I mean, I can't imagine 35 years from now what the Age of Sigmar universe is going to be like. It will have been going on and on and on, and there'll be so much. There'll be races that are completely entrenched. There'll have been races that have been created, probably completely destroyed in that 30 years. And that's what I actually do really like. At the end of the day, they are a miniatures company that produce novels and books, and they're like any author where the final finished book is a fraction of the total knowledge base they've written. You take something like Pottermore that J.K. Rowling wrote. She has this incredible bank of knowledge of all these family trees and stuff like that you never hear mentioned in the books, but she still thought about it to kind of create these realistic feeling characters and things like that. And that's what I really like, is that the world that exists there is a dedicated team to literally create this incredible kind of backdrop and keep developing it and make it really interesting, so that people want to join the game and keep playing the game, and people get invested in these factions. And it's not just about going, oh, cool, I want to play this army because it wrecks face. You'll get 2%, 1% of players that do that. Everybody else goes, oh, why are you playing Deepkin? Because I love them. They're really cool. They're built from agony, and they live under the sea, and they have these really cool sea creatures. It's not, because they kill everything. It just isn't for most people. And myself included, if there was an army that just ruined across it just was the best army and just blew everything off in a turn, if I didn't find it fundamentally interesting and cool, I wouldn't play it.
Yeah. Well, it's like I don't know if people out there might be familiar with the Painty Men podcast, and they've talked about the Arse Clown army.
Yeah.
It's like if they just build an army, the miniatures are just literally clowns pulling down their pants, shoving their asses out at the player who's playing them. But they were the most hardcore, like wipe everything off the table army. But you just had to paint 150 arse clowns. Would people still play it?
It's true. There's there are chaos gods that I will not play. I started back in the day. I have a Slaanesh demon army and I have a Zench army, but I don't identify with Nurgle or Khorne. And no matter how great they are, they're breaking the meta, whatever it might be. Like the story doesn't compel me. I don't like the idea, or it doesn't resonate with me because if you think about the hobby, playing the game is such a small percentage of the game. It's about painting, building, reading about the army, thinking about it. That it's those moments, and you guys are right. Like no matter how good a rule set is, I think most people are drawn to the model first and foremost. And that's always when someone asks us, and I'm sure you guys are all the same, where do I start with Age of Sigmar? It's not Ghoul Kings are the best right now. It's what draws inspiration. I see Liam's face, but ultimately it's like, what are you drawn to?
Yeah, which kind of like leads into like our next question is like, how does creating an army differ when you try and blend a narrative into it? If that makes sense. So like, I know, for example, James, you've done armies now where it's like based on like having Nagash around, or like you had a Coven Throne and stuff in your army and stuff. So like, does having like a narrative around it, like blending into it, does that affect the way you guys write armies or build armies or paint them? However,
yeah, definitely. Always. Like I've sort of found I've gone through different phases with how I've been running my death list. So I've had a phase where I've used Neferata a lot, and I've called that particular configuration Neferata's Hunting Party, and it always has to have Vargeist in it. It always has to have obviously Neferata, Vampire Lord, Zombie Dragon, like it's and zombies sort of thing. So it's the sort of key elements that I've found that I've had in those with Neferata's Hunting Party kind of. And that's a mode of play for me where I'll try and make sure there's like some kind of debuff happening in every phase, like whether it's bravery or from the spells or whatnot. So it's all about the debuff and the blood, Legion of Blood allegiance kind of thing, that mechanic. But yeah, so the rules will inform it as well. But it's also, this is the theme, is it's her hunting party. She's going out, she's having a ball, like hunting down some monsters and prey or whatever. But then recently I've been doing Archon and the Legion of Sacrament, and it's been all about Archon and his Nexus of Power and just bringing back units and just all that death filth, and sending out heaps of endless spells. Just like had about 5 endless spells in it. So that's kind of like a configuration and a mode of play or a style of play that I've really enjoyed within the Death faction. And obviously in earlier iterations of my lists and tournaments, it's sort of, I think that's probably why I like the Death faction so much, is because it's so broad and you can explore different modes of play and play styles within the one faction. But yeah, Coven Throne, as I said, like in the Mortis Engine, like they're beautiful models. I love seeing them together on the table. So that also, influences my narrative as well. Like I work out a way to wire these two models on the board together, and plus the Coven Throne got a pretty good upgrade in the latest in the Legion of Nagash with her command ability and things like that. So it's a model I'd had for a while and used. I took it to the first CanCon tournament. Not the most competitive choice, but it was just something I wanted in that army, and that was part of that theme and the way I was playing at the time. And it's kind of like a history of, I can sort of vaguely document where I come with my play styles and stuff. So yeah, bring it back to the narrative. It's sort of, it definitely does inform, but it's like my own personal narrative, because the Mortal Realms gives you that opportunity to create and forge your own sort of narrative for your army within a brand new landscape.
Does the realm rules help it? Like, as in, for example, like telling that your army is from a certain realm?
Definitely. So majority of my lists have been from Shaiish, for obvious reasons. But
Yeah.
I've sort of branched into, I've applied Heish to my Archon and my Nagash list over the weekend, but mainly so I can get the Ether Quartz brooch. So, is that a narrative choice? I don't know. Some people might be shaking their heads right now.
Probably
But,
from the same store that people buy their ethereal amulets from.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
He's diversified his inventory.
Yeah.
Same marketplace.
Yeah.
Definitely the same marketplace.
But I didn't buy the Grimghast Reapers at that marketplace either, so I wear that as a badge of pride. Although I'm still eyeing them off. Don't worry, they'll come around.
Chris,
But,
how about you?
yeah.
How about yourself? Because I know Khorne has smited you once when you put a Gaunt Summoner in your Khorne list, and Khorne was not happy with you putting a magic caster in.
There's a shooting Khorne list with magic.
It was a shooting Khorne list.
Yeah, I mean,
explain your narrative.
Explain yourself.
I was going to say, like, to be fair, even for me, someone that I'm not a talented painter at all, but I still have to come up with an idea for how I'm going to paint my models and what color I want to paint them. And for me, that definitely is going, okay, well, where's my theme for this? So I think back to my first army I did for Age of Sigmar, which was my Harbinger chamber for Stormcast. And that for me, it's 3 Vanguard wings. And so for me, it was this whole idea of, well, they are Sigmar's kind of literally, it's a Vanguard. It's a hunting, searching kind of party that he sent one to every realm to go and kind of scout ahead. And then the whole chamber comes together. And so on the tabletop, I had to be able to distinguish between these 3 separate Vanguard wings in terms of gameplay. So I needed them painted differently, but also I was like, well, they are from different realms. So I did 3 Vanguard wings in completely different schemes. So I did a crimson and bronze scheme, and all the basing I did lava basing because I wanted to try it out. And I was like, okay, that's the one from Akshi. So I did lava basing with kind of red and bronze armor. And then I had one from Azir, which is my kind of standard, I guess, basing, which is all lightning crackles. So I did blue undertones on the base and then put the crackle paint over the top. So it's like lightning's been striking the earth, and you can see those blue kind of scorches and things like that. And the armor was silver and blue to kind of be much more lightning based. And then I had an army that I said had gone through the realm of death. So I had my death basing, which I have across every single death model I have, because for me, the way I picture the realm of death is it's one ginormous graveyard. So every single base I have, whether it's Nighthaunt, whether it's Legions, anything like that, any model that comes from the realm of death for me, I do the same basing on my Flesh Eater Quartz army, and it's literally graves upon graves upon graves. So I use the gravestone markers and I create green stuff mounds and then cover it all in gravel. And any model I have, so I did this whole Vanguard wing with the same basing that I've done on all of my Flesh Eater Quartz. I've done it on my Nighthaunt that I've started. And then the actual Stormcast themselves, I did very dark armor with purple tinges, because that to me was kind of the colors of death. So I had 3 completely different color schemes in my army to represent these 3 different Vanguard wings. So not only was it distinguishable on the tabletop, but in terms of deciding on those color schemes, it was completely narratively driven. It was that this comes from this realm, this comes from this realm, and this comes from this realm. And it just makes it easier for me to pick a color scheme. I've done the same thing with my Chaos. So you mentioned my Khorne army and my Gaunt Summoner. For me, the idea of Chaos, that it can appear in any realm, is that the magic of Chaos literally permeates the realms. And so I use a green stuff roller for all of my Chaos bases, which is just a series of dark runes. And then for all of the Khorne, it's all painted metallic, and then it goes Khorne kind of it's the technical gem paint. So the red goes over the top to represent Khorne's kind of influence. So it's almost like these areas of magic infused, I guess, kind of summoning that lets all the demons and stuff spill forth. So that's kind of, if it's Khorne models, then it's the red hue of Khorne, and then Nurgle is green and Tzeentch is blue. So as Liam said, I did a display board for it, which was one of the Games Workshop
battles,
kind of realm of battle tiles, divided into 3, painted entirely silver, and then divided into 3 and coated equally with the red, blue, and green technical paints to represent kind of the realm being taken over and created as summoning kind of planes for the demons of the 3 chaos gods that kind of worship and that my armies come from. And yeah, that definitely kind of influences my decision. Like the narrative influences how I paint, and that's based completely on the realms and the gods and things like that. So
I know for myself, a couple of the narrative things that I've done is, so again, for anyone who's seen this channel before, they know of diehard Free People player or Empire player from back in the day. But in my Death army, which was really my first army outside of the Empire, I had created that Empire Free People legacy into Death, where my skeleton shields are all 6 different of the Empire / Free People color schemes. So like Nuln and Avaland and all these different colors to kind of give a little nod. I put Johan, the little running, screaming guy. I think on Manfred von Carstein, I based him on a tree and like kind of breaking through a tree to, again, look good, but also to make it easy to transport. But a halfling from a giant kid is kind of tied up. So again, the halflings were big in the Empire. And I've kind of carried that over even into my Gloomspite, where my Troll Hag has a hiding Free People player, which was from the 5th edition giant kit. I've got Johan. I've got Free People themes kind of through my army. And even in Border War this weekend, I name all my characters. And on my army list that I hand to my opponent, every single person is named. And I remember one opponent said to me, "Oh, who's Magrot? I don't recognize him from the battle tome." I'm like, no. Magrot, the loon boss, and Cinder's the Troggoth princess or the Troggoth hag. That's the narrative. And I go to that effort to name every one of my characters, and in some cases the unit as well.
Yeah, that's cool. See, like, yeah, for me, my narrative would be like
Pokemon.
That. Like, I did do that with my flesh eaters. That was good fun. That was a bit of like a lunchtime joke with Spinetti, which came too real too quickly. But like, for example, my Sylvaneth, where I knew that I was going to do a really dark color scheme with them, like from the Realm of Shadows. And it's funny enough because the artifact I was using at the time was from Realm of Shadows, the Doppelganger Cloak, when it was broken as all hell. So like I did the whole serpent look on my trees, and a lot of people were quite interested of like why I did that. And part of it was want to make a centerpiece model Durthu, like make Durthu like a proper centerpiece model, and then and my branch race and stuff into like serpent spites, which I really wanted to do, and it worked really well to the point that it actually was too good to be true that the kits worked too well. But like I kept that like idea of like I had a set theme, did it. And then my Flesh Eater Quartz became an actual narrative meme about Pokemon. But like I have like when it comes to list building and stuff, I had like an inspiration and hobby idea of what I want to do to blend like a kind of a narrative into it. Even if I didn't do a Pokemon theme, I knew I would probably name all my dragons and stuff, like give them all a different name.
And if you rewind and go on Liam's Twitter for about rewind 6 months, like forget the filth for the last recent couple of months. But you can go see Liam has done this amazing conversion with Durthu, which has the body of Snake Lady Marathi. And that theme kind of ties through. And I think your branch wraiths are also snake bottoms.
Yeah, they're all from the Medusa kit. So all from the Blood Sister and Bloodstalker kits and stuff. And I just kept it going. Like I wanted to do a whole Shadow Realm theme. And since at the time, Realm of Shadows was heavily been mentioned in the narrative through Marathi and Deepkin and stuff, and you see animals and creatures coming from the Realm of Shadows, like from the Deepkin, like all their sharks and their turtles and stuff. So I was like, cool, may as well just get this like cool like forest blend thing where the tree spirits are mixing in with like the creatures around them. So like the snake idea was perfect for them. Couldn't really do a branch wraith out of a shark kit, but as good as I could get.
I'm actually a little bit sad because I've talked to Liam for years now about creating a Realm of Metal Sylvaneth, and the Loon Curse is in the Realm of Metal. But, thinking about like, well, I don't have to go with this wood theme. These could be metal spikes. It could be, changing the heads to be, again, more evil, more death, evil trees if it was from a different realm.
I reckon if you were like, for example, since we chatted about that, seeing the Arch Revenant, like not Arch Revenant, the fact that he has a metal helmet on him, you could easily just do head swaps of like free people helmets, or like even the Wild Riders from the Wanderers kits, get their helmets and just kit bash stuff, and then like
my ghouls have the old Empire Knight helmets and things. So so let me ask, I guess then, and you know, one of the reasons that we have the mortally wounded crew on here is I know that they've not only really big narrative, but they're actually I think an inspiration, but also a real pioneer in creating this space to play in a more narrative theme. So boys, do you guys want to share a bit more about this idea and, you know, thinking about like what's it all about?
I think like Chris is really like it's a massive extension of his hobby. Like the whole, like people don't know, Chris has written a whole scenario pack from scratch for this event and for the last 2 events as well. And it's a really it's a deep dive into another realm of the hobby, which is actually creating scenarios and putting them out there and running a tournament with them. I think it's a huge credit to you, Chris. Did you want to talk a bit more about that process? Or
yeah, I mean, obviously we're like talking about, we were kind of around from the start of the Sydney scene, and I wanted to kind of get more involved and start kind of I basically wanted to run a tournament to kind of have somewhere to kick off the tournament scene in Sydney, so that people didn't have to travel and stuff like that, and also that people would travel to Sydney. So it wasn't just the Sydney people traveling to Brisbane and Melbourne and things like that, but you'd also start getting people come from Brisbane to Melbourne to come up to Sydney for events. And so I thought, okay, I'm running an event. I always like to be a bit different. You see that in my list writing from the start. I don't want to just do the same thing, and I really don't like copying. I got nothing against net lists and things like that. It's just, for me, I like to do my own thing. And so that kind of carries straight through into an event. I thought, okay, I want to do something different, but I want to do something that I would have fun playing in. And so I was like, okay, I want it to be match play focused, because I think it's the easiest setting to run an event in, because it gives that kind of, it gives some structure for people to rock up with roughly balanced lists, et cetera, from the framework that GW provides rather than me. So it's kind of a setting that everyone's used to, but something a bit different. So we're not doing kind of the same thing. So I go, okay, well, I can change the scenarios we're playing. So then for me, it's like, okay, I want to write some new scenarios. So then I don't want to just do 5 completely disjointed, random kind of scenarios. So immediately I'm going, okay, how do I join them? And so then I'm thinking of a narrative to kind of flow these 5 kind of missions together. And certainly from the first year, I kind of went through and I had this idea of traveling through the realms, through different realm gates, and trying to get to Azir and trying to reclaim these kind of shards of creation. And so I kind of started just developing missions. So you kind of had these 4 shards of creation. So there was the first 4 missions. Each one was based around a shard, and they were of the basic elements of kind of fire, earth, air, water that a lot of people would be familiar with. But it gave me this kind of narrative kind of basis to start writing things around. But it let me write a bit. I wrote probably a page and a half of narrative actually between each of the scenarios as well, so you could actually read through. And for me, that was a bit of creative writing that I'd never really done before, but it was something that I was quite passionate about, and I wanted people to be able to understand this event that they were coming into and understand these missions, so that they could get on board with that narrative. And maybe people would carry out their own stories, or they'd have their own kind of, like, what was their goal of the leader of their warband and things like that. And there was very much a awareness that there's the 4 grand alliances as well. And so I had different outcomes that could happen based on whether you were from order or chaos or destruction. And that first year was probably a lot more narrative than the second year, and certainly the third year, because based on feedback from people, it was really fun. But again, it's a match play event. And so most of the feedback you get is people really enjoyed the narrative, but they don't like the random elements, because the more random elements you have, it does take away from that match play fairness kind of feeling. People don't like things happening to.
Wasn't the first year Nagash comes in and just auto slain your hero?
Yeah,
That was one of them.
yeah, I remember that.
And so there was some things where, based on the combination, you got a good effect. Others, you might just lose your general. And it was things like that I took that feedback on board, and everyone still said they had a really great time. But I was asking for feedback because I want people to enjoy the event as much as possible. And how can I improve? Because I don't want to just assume I always know best and just do the same old things. So people gave that feedback of, no, we really like the narrative element, but please make it a bit more balanced. And so basically every year that's been my thing is, okay, Sydney Slaughter's kind of our event now, like James is back to help. And every year, like Sydney Slaughter it won't be your standard match play General's Handbook scenarios. It will be match play. It will try to be as balanced as possible, but it's always going to have some narrative element to it to hopefully get people a bit more invested and not feel that kind of tournament fatigue of, we've been playing under this for a year. Do I want to keep doing this? It's something a bit different. And every year, everyone that's come said it's really fun. And hopefully every year I'm improving it and making it more streamlined. I've got more people play testing the pack and stuff this year. And all the feedback I've had, probably my harshest critique is Dan Brewer, because he's very much I want things to be even. I don't like random elements. And his critique this year is that it's the best pack I've written from a match play perspective.
But still having a narrative aspect in it.
But it's still narratively based. There's not a story that links everything through this year. It's 5 separate scenarios, but they're all based on basically recent released battle tomes. So anyone that's kind of, you're getting that hype of, oh yeah, there's the new Skaven are out and there's the Gloom Spites and they're really cool. And I kind of like that myself. And I was like, oh yeah, the Flesh Eaters are out. And so I've basically written these 5 scenarios around. As soon as you look at them, you'll go, oh yeah, that's cool. That's the Skaven scenario, and that's the Gloomspite scenario. So you immediately kind of get this feeling of how it should feel. And then I've added the elements from Malign Sorcery and things like that, of the Realmscape features and realm magic and command abilities. But other than that, stripped all of that away. So everything you need is on one page. It's on this scenario. It's not overly complex. It's not gonna.
You don't need 8 books to play.
Yeah, you need this one page that's everything's on there. This is how you play. There's one element. Nothing's too crazy. Nothing's over the top. It's not going to throw it out of balance, but it gives people something hopefully enjoyable and a bit different to play.
I think if I break down like what I'm hearing, so one, we're talking about Sydney Slaughter, which is an event that Chris has run. This is the 3rd year consecutively that you've run this blended. I don't want to say it's a narrative event. It's not a match play event. It's really a blended experience, which has been popular every year. I've really enjoyed. Around the world, there has been so many of these blended narrative match play events, you know, whether it's last year, there was a Coalescence Malign Portents kind of global campaign that was put on by the Neo community. You've had, you know, the likes of Raw, which happens in, I think the Raw is in the UK. Nova happens in America, Virginia, I think it is. Some things are a series. So I remember when I ran Coalescence Malign Portents, you started off with a small force and it kind of grew and grew and grew. And there was something that tied within each other. And but then there's other things where I think of like Sydney Slaughter, the first year, where after the campaign, I actually wrote up, I don't know if you remember this, Chris, I wrote up a detailed report that my general would have, his bird's eye view of every battle. I didn't get any rewards for it. It was never a part of the pack, but I felt compelled that this is my story, this is my experience, and I wanted to document it.
Yeah, and that's something that was actually really cool to read that back. Like I did read those through, and things like Andrew Bigwood I know turned up as well, and he had his kind of Free City of Molten Heart, and I read all of that, and it's just really cool to go to see the people that really take on. You can see the people that really are narratively driven in the hobby, but also the really top kind of match play gamers came along as well. But you can still, they're still really enjoying the background and the setting. They're not just like, yeah, I smashed my opponent. It was, oh yeah, it was really fun when I kind of like I grabbed the artifact and then this happened, and it was cool to hear people kind of retelling their stories with a sort of narrative focus, which is, yeah, it's enjoyable.
Well, I remember Paul Grixty in his battle, I think I can't remember, like round 5, there was like this 50-50 call, and it was like Alariel would heal you or Nagash would like smite you. And, I was lucky to have Alariel help me and heal up my Carmine Dragon. But then I remember Paul had killed his general. And in a match play environment, you crack the shits. You just like, this random element has just ruined my plans. But in a narrative, the victory isn't necessarily the reward. It's the story, and it's the tale, and it's these moments. Like James, I'm seeing you like giggle and laugh, and I'm sure you've got many of these where your army defies the odds, or a roll that should have happened didn't happen, and there's these consequences. And you got something for me?
It's when you're cheering for your opponent to win their rolls and to do well. It's like, I think that's like, playing match play events, but I'm still in a narrative headspace because I love what's happening on the board. Like I'll be, for example, I'll want that unit to charge my guys just so I can see them fight, or I'll send my general at their general so we can have a big general fight sort of thing. It's not so much based around the objective. It's more about, okay, let's have a duel in the middle of the board or something like that. And yeah, when people miss their saves or whatever, I'm like, sometimes I just feel just as disappointed about it as they do, because I'm so immersed in what's happening on the field. It's not about him versus me. It's about our armies, and we're telling this story now. And even though it's in that match play environment, I still kind of just find myself defaulting into that mindset, which is probably why I don't like top podium every tournament. But it doesn't bother me because it's more about the fun for me. And I suppose that's just with it. Yeah.
I remember, I think it was like the first year. Dispossessed Dan had a particular you wrote a particular command ability that he could use that it makes him get like this amazing buff, but he would probably die if he did it. And I remember he just did not care. He was like 4 beers down, like in that one game, and he was like, I'm going to do this and this and this. And you could just hear the amazing stories out of this one little dwarf character just running around, slaying shit. And he goes, yeah, this is how it should be. And then he was like going up against like top armies, like top filthy, like Stormcast armies or whatever. And he's like, I don't give a crap. Let's do this. And he was just running around. This one dwarf is just running around the battlefield with this artifact all buffed up. He was probably going to die after he does this, and just like spun around, killed some shit, and then just went, cool, awesome, he's dead, he's done his part. And he just, even though he was his general and he probably needed it for most of the game, he just goes, don't care, totally worth, don't care.
Yeah. Because I literally remember that because it was a story of Dan saying, I'm going to take it every single turn I can until I die. And he played Rob Remus, Star Drake, and I think it was a Slayer, it was either an Unforged or a Warden King, and he literally was like, okay, I'm going to use it because it was like a thing that let him run and charge, and he could double it up to go further or double it, but on a 2-up, like every time he'd use it, it would do D6 mortal wounds. And so the odds of him surviving were like tiny, but it was like, I don't care. And somehow he survived, and he ran like 24 inches across the board in a single turn with this Slayer, got like double the attacks, and he literally killed Rob's Star Drake. And it was just this crazy story that Dan was like so happy about. And he was like, I don't care. Like this Slayer is like taken this rune. He's like jammed it into his chest. Doesn't care if he's going to die. And it worked. He like took out this Star Drake and everything. It was really cool.
Yeah.
And as for anyone who's listening, this is when Star Drakes were amazing. Like Star Drakes were like auto included in the Stormcast. So like the fact that this like fire, like Slayer just ran around, just spun its axes around and just killed it. And you could just see Rob's face was like, I'm super impressed by this. But
like
also
even Rob enjoyed it. That was the thing. Yeah. Like Rob had his Star Drake taken off by a little Slayer, and he enjoyed it as well. It was funny.
And I think this is the power of narrative and open play, where, if you were to ask me about my 6 CanCon games that happened literally 3 months ago or 4 months ago, I would struggle. But here we are retelling tales from Sydney Slaughter, that happened 3 years ago. You know, I remember the game that I had with Liam in this Zench's Crystal Palace, where the board was split up into 6, and the only way you could get between the rooms was going through a little portal, and you could shoot through the portal.
Yes.
Sometimes the portal would shoot back at you. If you cast magic, it could come back at you, or it could actually be even more powerful coming through it.
Yeah, that's such a fun scenario.
I remember this. I remember I got my Branch Witch to cast a spell. Like, I think it was like Arcane Bolt. It was Arcane Bolt. I remember it was Arcane Bolt.
This is turn 1. This is turn 1. I hadn't even moved the model yet.
Turn 1, and on a roll of a 6, it doubles the damage.
No, it did like D6.
Oh
yeah, it doubled, and this was when Arcane Bolt always did D3.
So it doubled the damage, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna pick this portal, and I'm gonna do this, and I rolled a 6. And I was like, so it's double the damage, and all I had to roll was a 5 or a 6, and I was like, cool, yeah, your general's dead. And Magro's face was just completely like, my general's dead. My general's dead, and I was just like, so that happened.
actually that same scenario, Ben. Like, I think I was playing it at home. I think I was playing against you, Chris, or it might have been Brent. I'm not sure, but Arkan sent a Curse of Years through the portal. Was it against you?
Yeah.
Well, I think it was on the lead up, and Arkan sent Curse of Years through the portal. I rolled the one where it bounces back at you.
I rolled a 1. Yeah.
And so Arkan Curse of Years through the portal, bounces back in, and I proceeded to roll a perfect Curse of Years situation down to nothing, and he just literally zapped himself off the board.
Yeah,
that happened. That was revenge.
And I remember there was like one scenario as well. We'll get back into like talking about more, but I remember this one scenario. It was like Corn's Arena, where like anyone who was backboarding was going to get punished. And I remember this was the biggest point that Chris had to make.
I got punished because I got punished by Ash McEwen's Iron Jaws in a combat scenario.
Yeah. So it was like an army where like if you have shooting, you are going to get punished for it. So anyone who's listening, because I can see Scrivo, Bill, and a few other from overseas, will try and link you to the pack most likely within this. And if you guys want to play them, it was really fun. But like,
they're all on the website. So
I remember this one army. I remember my army was like, cool. Sylvaneth usually shot far back with great bows and stuff. Like we were like safe. And I just remember I got punished so badly. I was like, yeah, cool. My army's going to die from this. And everyone's army is just like, yeah, we literally have to like, it was a bloodbath in the middle, which was the whole point of the scenario was Chris and you, James, wanted a bloodbath in the middle. And it was just awesome that narrative scenario would punish anyone who was being a coward. And then like when you go in, you still get punished. You're still probably going to get tabled, but hell, it was a great scenario. So, and that's just like where like custom scenarios and I remember it was like I think it was like the first year it was like still within the first year of me playing like competitive AOS and stuff, that there was like, it was just such a fresh breath of air of just like something different, which was cool. And
we've come a long way. If you look at every single battle tome that's been released, there is at least one narrative style scenario. In the Malign Portents book, not Malign Sorcery, Malign Portents, there are scenarios in the General's Handbook. There's all these resources that you don't have to do what Chris has done, which is created custom scenarios. There's stuff that's off the shelf ready to go, and all it takes is you and your opponent having a discussion like, right, and I know Deke and I are dying to play a game with Flesh Eater Courts and Gloomspite, because in the narrative these guys work together, and there's a little bit between the Bad Moon and the Flesh Eater Courts, and we want to explore this narrative. But you could put any two forces together and go, right, like, why are we meeting? What's it all about? And that's what makes this powerful. And I think what I'm hearing from everyone is that there's just great stories. Win, lose, or draw. It's not about the trophies. It's not about the masters or ETC points. It's about having great stories off the back. So I want to ask you guys, especially the more mortally wounded crew, is if you go to an event like Sydney Slaughter, what can you expect as a player?
You expect to make great memories. You can expect to be telling stories about that weekend in 3 years' time, at least, or more.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you'll get a good match play experience. Like, it is definitely a match play event. Especially this year, it's more match play than it's been previously. But you will get those stories. You'll get a chance to play something a bit different. Fun scenarios, different deployments, different realm magic, things like that. You get to drink a lot. You'll get a big hall to play in. You'll get to meet loads of new people. You'll get a whole painting competition as well in the evening, which is something I want the event to be, not just a gaming event. I know there's a lot of painters out there that actually they're painters before they're gamers, and they go to events solely to try and win the painting awards, and they have to play for the weekend because you have to enter the event in order to win, to enter painting competitions. So that's something that I wanted to kind of make a bigger aspect of my event as well. And so it's something I'd started last year and carrying on this year, where there's a separate painting competition, and you don't have to enter models from your army. You can bring anything you've worked on. So you can, there's 4 different categories. You've got hero, monster, unit, and there's an open category, which can be anything as long as it's fantasy based. But it lets people that are predominantly painters bring anything that they might be their absolute pride and joy that they've worked on, but they don't have to take necessarily a weaker list or something that they don't enjoy playing, because it doesn't have to be in your army, but you can still enter it in the competition.
Is there trivia again to make Liam be embarrassed?
There may be trivia. It's not confirmed yet. We'll see. But there was trivia last year. But I think, yeah, it should just be a fun weekend. There's a private bar that's going to be staffed all weekend. Big space, loads of people. The table should look great. We've got loads of mats. Buffet, yeah. Lunch is provided. So yeah, it should just be a great experience. It'll be a nice big space, and yeah, hopefully a place to play some fun, different games.
I'm actually going to pull up the pack right now, so people might want to.
While we look at the pack, now, is there a particular event around the world that inspired you to do this, Chris and James? Like a particular
Probably
one in the UK?
The first year would have been South Coast, which was a big event, which is very much billed as being a big match play event that people want, that the competitive people, it's on their list of ones to try and win. But you also always get those big narrative armies, because they generally always did custom, certainly in the previous years, they did custom scenarios that Russ had written. And for me, kind of the getting into the hobby, and when I moved over here, started listening to podcasts, kind of Heel and Hammer, Face Hammer, they were some of the big ones. And so I heard about the event, and it was an event that I was like, that would be so cool to play in. And so, like I say, putting on my own event, I was like, I want to run an event I would want to play in, and I want to play in South Coast. And hopefully one year I can get over there and go play, because unfortunately when I lived in the UK, I didn't really know about the independent kind of tournament scene. I wasn't, to be honest, I was really bad at Warhammer and only played with a couple of friends. Age of Sigmar's completely changed that since moving here. But now I'd love to go to a South Coast. I never went when I lived there, but now I live the other side of the world. It's an event I'd love to travel to and go to one year. So yeah, probably definitely South Coast is the sort of event that I based this on. But I think I've gone further. I think if anything, they've stepped away from the narrative kind of focus for a more general match play experience.
So this is the pack, by the way, if people are wondering what I'm randomly scrolling through. And I think when you look at something like this, and again, I recognize not everyone who's watching is from Australia, and there are plenty of events like Sydney Slaughter. Sydney Slaughter is quite unique in the way Chris builds it. But if you are looking for a non-traditional match play event, if you're looking for something that's a little bit different, like a Raw, like a Nova, I think Luke Dadhammer is going to be running something in Australia as well. There are these narrative style, Animosity, I think, is another one that's coming up. There are ways to play and build your army, even chatting with your local games club to have a chat to say who wants to pick up a narrative, draw inspiration from a book or a realm. Chris, is there anything in particular you'd want to call out from a pack?
I've definitely tried to split the gaming from the painting, from the sportsmanship this year. So the gaming awards will be based on your gaming performance. But at the same time, I very much believe that good sportsmanship is a huge, integral, and very important part of the game for the enjoyment of everybody. And so splitting out best sports, I've given it 3 awards. So there's a first, second, and third this year. So everyone will make a first, second, and third preference vote.
Actually, I might pause you there as well. Like while we're on the page of your sponsor Pro Painted, you can see here that there are 18 different best in faction. So all of a sudden, to me, that's very different to a traditional from a match play event where you'd normally reward first, second, third, and last.
Yeah, again, so as you say, we're really lucky that Pro Painted Studios have come on board as one of our sponsors, and they create.
Quick question, Chris.
Yep.
If the Sylvaneth book comes out, will there be new tokens?
Unfortunately, they're the ones that are being provided. So it'll be the 18 currently produced token sets that are listed. But yeah, it means that there's a prize to give out to 18 people that come along, that put each person that performs the best in those factions, they'll get those prizes. And that's in addition to any of the actual trophies and main awards that they might win for placing first, second, third, best death, best order, etc.
Now, what if a particular person was going to run, like, let's say, Gordrak with some Gloomspite, right? But like the army's 90% Gloomspite, right? But like, would they be able to get the Gloomspite award if
I didn't set this up, by the way. This is all Liam here. So
I know he's trying to ambush me, and I'm not having it.
So just for clarity, Liam, stop talking. So I'm building Grotdrak, and you can see that he has the face of a Mangler Squig, and instead of Gordrak on top, we have Skarsnik, the loon boss, with his little chain. So I can't bring him in Gloomspite, but he's in my narrative.
He's great, but if the list is mixed destruction, then unfortunately no, because Gordrak.
I didn't set this up, by the way.
Gordrak is 500 odd points, so that's not 10% of an army, Liam. That's 25%.
Who cares? It's still cool.
It would be unfair to the Gloomspite players.
Sorry, Magro. I did try to help you out.
That's all right. That was unplanned, but I think again, like going back to the original points, events like Sydney Slaughter aren't your traditional tournaments. They are games where you can explore the world. I've seen great examples where people just pick one realm, and they go to great lengths of theming tables to be like that realm, or they create custom rules for that realm. I think who was it? Somebody over in the UK is basing their whole event around the realm of beasts, and their trophies are Chris Tomlin. I think it is Chris Tomlin ran an event recently, the same week as the Justice GT, and
was it Blackout?
No, not Blackout. He had another one. It was purely around the realm of beasts, and his awards were written up for bestial type awards, like the names, the scenarios, the way, even like the list composition, and like allowing, I think it was additional behemoths, or there was some type of scenarios that were kind of like built around this bestial land of Gur. So I think there are so many different ways of playing that if we're just playing match play, we're really limiting ourselves. It's like going to a buffet and eating the same dish every buffet, but there's so many other options available.
100%. Yeah.
Just quickly gonna say this now. Bad Moon Cafe over in London, which is like a place that I definitely have on my bucket list to go to. They are doing one-day events set in Pacific realms, predetermined. So they have like one tournament in the realm of fire, realm of thing, just for a build of a narrative, and seeing that kind of cool stuff is like awesome to see, which is cool. So thanks, Scrivo. But
I wonder how many Nagashes and spell balls turn up in the Ulgu theme tourney.
Yes.
Yeah, was it so yeah, because so pretty much it's cool that it's like your first year was inspired by South Coast, as we brought up. Now this year you said it's inspired by the new releases. What was the second year inspired by? Was it by a book?
Oh yes, that's right.
Oh, by the way, I'm just bringing up the players
yeah,
pack
so
for the new war.
Yes, so the
What was the
second
second
year
year
was all inspired by a book series I was reading, which was oh, my mind's just gone blank now.
It was a book that even a few other people knew, and this is a funny thing. It's a book that people thought the Stormcast were based on.
The Stormlight or something.
The Stormlight Archive
Yeah.
series.
There you go.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a series that I was reading at the time, and I actually started reading to them because other podcasters, I think it was Russ Veal and Byron from Facehammer, were talking about saying how great they are, and I think Chris Tomlin as well. And so from that, I was like, okay, I want to check out these books, and then read them, and yeah, totally. There's so much in there that you can read and be like, wow, this really feels like Stormcast are based on this stuff. And so that was my idea. That was what I was really pumped for in that second year was Stormlight Archive, and it got my narrative juices flowing, and I wrote the whole kind of pack and 5 scenarios all about that that all kind of had that theme in it. And it was cool getting a few messages from people saying, oh, cool that you like Stormlight Archive and things like that. So
now something really cool. So Margaret, can you go back up quickly?
And these, by the way, this is the Sydney Slaughter pack, and
This is sort of pack, but it's just some people can see here. All your scenarios all look very similar to things that we see in the GHB now. If you look at where the objectives are, however, they play differently. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, some of them, for example, spawning pools is one of them, where if you look at it and you read it through, you'll see that it's actually very similar to
Gorged Earth or Better Part of Valor.
To Better Part of Valor, but I know that there's a few issues that people have with that scenario, which the fact that it's a custom scenario, I've changed. So hopefully those issues don't appear and people have more fun than they might playing Better Part of Valor. So spawning pools is already known as the better part of Valor. So I'm trying to make a matched play type experience that has narrative driven, but that people find as enjoyable as possible.
Yep.
And some of the General's Handbook scenarios I think are really great scenarios to play, and some of them I think just needed a slight tweak, or I just wanted to change them just a little bit. So a few of them will feel quite familiar to existing scenarios, and then some of them are completely new, like the Norholes.
Yeah,
so it's not a huge stretch if you haven't had enough time to practice all the scenarios to death, pretty much. Like you've got, it's not a huge leap to jump into the mindset for these scenarios. But if Anthony, if you don't mind scrolling down to Valley of Death.
Yeah.
Is that what you were going to talk about, Liam?
I was going to say, like, Valley of Death, I saw look like focal points. Is that right?
It's the way that Valley of Death.
Oh no, total commitment.
I played this scenario with Brad, his 3 people versus my Archon list, I think it was. But so you've got your 2 deployments opposite each other, and there's this race to these opposite objectives over on the other side of the board. So you've got to kind of guard your objective in front of you, because you can go try and take your opposite objective at the same time. You've got this stuff over on the other end of the field that you got to race over as well. So yeah, you kind of have this punch up, and then you're both sort of screaming to get the other one. So it was a really fun game, a really fun like mechanic within that scenario. I think a lot of people are going to really enjoy this one.
When I see this, I think to myself, how the hell are all my 4 big dragons going to fit in deployment?
Oh yeah, that's right. That's right, because there is there's rules with if you're within 6 inches of the battle edge, I think it is.
They definitely will fit. It's just you have to decide where certain things go, because if you're at the edges of the battlefield, there's a chance that you might take mortal wounds from the spirits attacking from the valley's edge.
Yeah.
Now, last year, I remember, I forgot what scenario it was. It was a hero sniping scenario where it was pretty much all the heroes have to die. Where your deployment was semicircle. And I remember, I think it was like Peter's army was like, it can't actually physically fit in deployment.
It was one of those things where it could have fit if he literally had to make it fit. But I just said, look, if physically your army can't fit, then you just expand the deployment zone by the minimum distance necessary to make it fit. But I just didn't want people being like, well, I want to put it in this exact square, so you need to change it if there was space to fit it. It's like, I want all of the scenarios to feel different. the one thing I do find is a lot of the deployments at the moment are extremely similar. You basically have one mission where you play lengthways, but everything else is pretty much just across the table.
This is a great example. If you look at this, like there is no scenario that we're currently playing that has a deployment map like this.
And can I just say, I really wish they were ones like that, because I reckon the fact that there's one in the middle, like, I'm so excited that it's literally going to be like a rat race to that objective, and it's going to be a massive bloodbath, and pretty much whoever wins that middle objective has won the game. It's going to be great, and it's going to be a lot of combat.
Well, that's the thing. That one is your one is obviously easy to hold, so it's because you're already starting around it, so it's worth 1. The one in no man's land is kind of in between you, so that's worth 2. And then if you can get your opponents, which obviously should be the hardest one because it's in their territory, it's worth 3. So you've got that kind of, do I try and hold mine in the middle, or do I try and push for my opponents? So all of them ask for something a little bit different as well. So I try and encourage balance across list design as well through my scenarios. So there's much more of a mix in terms of scenarios where heroes score, or heroes are worth more, or even artillery or war machines are worth more. That's also a mechanic I like to play with to try and encourage more balanced, I guess, armies rather than very polarized lists.
Yep. Well, I'm super excited. I know we've practiced a couple of games. One game we didn't really practice because you put your whole army in front and I killed it. But we did have a second game, and it was a much more like to the point, which was cool. I think I practiced the Bad Moon with Ash with his 9-horn, and I thought it was really cool that, like, even though I tabled him, he had like 2 units left, and no matter where the moon went, he
not
could.
Sure Liam understands the concept of tabling someone, but
no. Pretty much, he had like 2 units left, and he knew that, like, if I won the priority, I would have tabled him. And I remember, no matter where the moon went, he might have had a chance. And the fact that the moon didn't go where it was a bit random. But like, I had most of the objectives, which is like smart play because my monsters ate him. But it was cool that, like, the objectives where, like, the moon was shining at the objective where his unit was. He goes, I actually have a chance. So I was like, yeah. And he, like, won the scenario and, like, held it back a bit. But it was really cool that, like, that randomness can get someone who's having, like, a bloodbath still have a chance, which was really cool.
So, you go.
I was just saying, it was just really cool, and it kind of, like, builds that narrative idea that, like, this one unit of heroic Nighthaunt are like, we're at the objective where the Bad Moon is shining. We're gonna, like, take this home, which I thought was really cool.
So I'm going to ask the boys a question each, and then we'll kind of start wrapping things up. Chris, I'm going to ask you first. If I'm interested in playing a scenario, a battle plan. Thanks, John. If I want to play a battle plan that's not match play, and maybe my games club is very much match play focused, 2,000 points. What's some advice you'd give me to maybe get my group playing, or at least open to these type of scenarios that they're unfamiliar with, or even building an army a little bit different?
I mean, not to try and promote my own thing, but I do think you could take this year's pack. It's on the website, so anyone can just go and find the pack and download the PDF through mortallywoundedpodcast.com under events. You'll find the packs from all 3 years, in fact, and just say, look, this is something that you can give to them and say, everything you need is on here. It should look extremely familiar to anyone that plays match play, because, as I say, the pack's been done with the General's Handbook kind of feeling the same wording, the same objective control kind of layout. So they should take it and feel like they're playing a normal type scenario. You could take one of the ones that is basically better part of Valor, so to say, or a slightly improved or slightly different, rather, kind of focal points, which has literally, it's the setup for focal points apart from the middle objective can only be controlled by heroes. So it's kind of a mix of focal points and places of power. But you could give them one of these scenarios and say, can we play this? Because it feels like a match play kind of scenario. Or to be honest, if your group just is dead set against it, I'd always just reach out through the Sydney page. If you're based in Sydney on Facebook, there'll always be people that will just jump on a type of game. If you say what you're looking for, there'll be someone there that will be more than happy to play you. I mean, there's the Sydney League going on at the moment, which takes, I think, pretty much any type of game. Like there's people playing like skirmish games and stuff, I think, leading into it. And correct me if I'm wrong, Liam, but you'll find people that like narrative, skirmish, anything, and they'll play something different. I think you just have to join Facebook, join Twitter. Like social media is so good for building those kind of gaming groups and finding new friends. If you're in a small group and people just don't want a bar of it, then just reach out to other people and kind of expand that group. But I would say that these are kind of good scenarios that you can use, but also, like you've already mentioned, Anthony, look through the battle tomes. And there's those kind of narrative based scenarios that tell a story. And if you've got a mate that absolutely loves his type of army and he loves the story of his army, even though he's a hardcore match play gamer, why don't you suggest a battle plan from his battle tome? Because it's going to revolve around his army. And if you've got another army and you can flex it, then you'll probably get some buy-in.
Great. Yeah. And James, if you were going to, I'm interested. I'm at the Games Club, and you're trying to explain to me a little bit about narrative and open, and trying to expand my mind a little bit, because I find often people aren't necessarily against it, but it's a very unfamiliar way, and you've got to explain and like sell the sizzle.
Yeah.
How would I sell the sizzle to my Games Club and on playing this type of game?
Well, I guess you would just engage with people, I suppose, like just talk about past game experiences. Like we've talked about our games, our memories from different games, things like that we've had over the years, and you kind of just build an excitement for it, like with your own enthusiasm. I guess if you can kind of get that fire and they can catch with them as well, that's just probably on a more of a different level. But sort of practically, I suppose I would say, hey, let's just try this scenario out today. Let's like I'd probably get one out of the core books, or one of the narrative scenarios, and say, hey, let's have a look at this, and would you be willing just to give it a crack, and let's just sit down and throw some dice, like no strings attached. If you don't like it, cool. If you might find that you really love it. I don't know. I think it's just more about the engagement you have with the people around you, and your enthusiasm for it, I think, is what can help push it over the line for people.
Anything you'd add to that, Liam?
Yeah, like I know from when I have someone new, or like trying to get into something simple, if it's not like I don't know, like pretty much like trying to get out of like match play scenarios or anything like that, because I know people are saying it's bloated. But I know for someone like, for example, who's new, trying to get into it, I always do like a simple like 3 objectives in the middle, something simple like that. But now since you've mentioned it, I do want to start probably looking at more the like battle plans. Is it battle plans or scenarios? I'm so used to saying scenarios.
It's battle plan.
Yeah.
It's scenario in my head, so sorry, Scrivo, but start doing the ones that are like in the battle times. Like I know there was a really cool one with flesh eaters, like I think it was this one or the last one, where there was one where it's like it's called like feast, like it's like hunting day, where like your enemy is in the middle in a circle, and then like you had to roll off where your flesh eater courts are coming on the board. Like stuff like that, like would be so much more. Like you still keep a match play in a way with like points wise, but the actual scenario, it's like your opponent has to try and escape and stuff like that. Like cool storylines, like similar to what James said from the start of the show. Because I remember you did a photo story of that battle report with your mates, Beastman and stuff, where you had like ruins and stuff.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's the one. So like doing stuff like that. I remember when you posted that, I literally said to you, I remember if I could find that post, I literally said it would be really cool to be part of this kind of cool narrative thing, because that kind of stuff was really cool to see. So for me,
It's funny you say that because I'm actually playing with my phone, not because I'm a jerk and not paying attention, but because that's a really interesting way of also creating a narrative is taking photos and sharing stories, whether it's on social, using an app like I use. This is a comic book app where you can like write captions and again like bring this story to life. Do little interviews from like what's happened and create their own battle report. There's a lot of crazy fun things you can do to make this a real story as opposed to just just playing a game.
Yeah, just say just want to do something different today. Been looking at this scenario. Let's give it a crack. And sure, who's worst thing they're going to do is say no.
I'd say if you make it, if you can always do one of the ones that is the odds are very much against you. If you get your butt kicked and you let your mate kick your butt by having 5 times the amount of stuff you've got, trust me, they'll have fun.
I think the one thing that most people were excited for was like malign portent scenarios, as we brought up earlier. Like some people, like no one really plays them, but I know that when the book first came out, a lot of people did play them, and that was the first time when we experimented like realm features and stuff or something similar.
Command points, that was really the first introduction to command points as well. I remember Deke and I really going through that, and it was awesome.
Yeah, so like that kind of thing was really cool to experiment with. So like if people want to get into it, that book is like $25, and I'm pretty sure it's cheaper on the web store. Just grab it, have a play with like I think it was like one about the purple sun or something.
Chain Colossus,
yeah. Where you literally could just play that and have a ball, and that's match play, but also got a narrative to it.
That's malign sorcery, but yes, malign portents does have a bunch of stories.
Yeah.
This has been fascinating, and I think people who are watching, I can see the chat's been going off. I think if I was to summarize, match play, narrative, they're not mutually exclusive.
Nope.
You can have a competitive narrative game as much as you can bring narrative into a competitive game. And people I found are very curious on a narrative. And, it's not about you forcing your narrative on somebody, but, tips like James has said around, having a little 1-pager on the story of your army. I know Andrew Bigwood and yourself do that really well. I think it was Travis or somebody when they went to South Coast GT, the way they did their army list, it was very much like a gardening book for Sylvaneth. I saw Ben Johnson did like a very bloody one for Khorne the other week. There are different ways that you can create a narrative and bring narrative to your game so that you create a story outside of just I want to beat you and I want to kill as much of your army as possible. And I think it's those moments that we kind of cherish, and win, lose, or draw, we both have fun.
Yeah.
You could even do something like, I know I've done this a few times, especially in the earlier times of Age of Sigmar, where I just loved a battle so much that I wrote a short story about that battle and gave it to my opponent afterwards as well, like for them as a keepsake for that game that we had. So it's just there's so many different ways you can get around it. If you've got a bit of a creative writing part of you that wants to come out, then here's another opportunity to scratch that itch and also really engage the people that you play as well.
Actually, just while we're wrapping up, you've just reminded me of something that Dispossessed Dan or Dan Say had done at BrizCon 2-3 years ago, the very first BrizCon. I remember he bought some objective markers. He bought an objective marker for each of his opponents, and he gave it to them as a gift. And it was all about a grudge. So if you beat me, you get to keep the token, and you're now in my book of grudges, and I want that back. So I want to have another game with you in the future. And as a dwarf player, as a narrative, as a little token of friendship, I thought that was awesome.
See, for me, the only people I get grudged against is people who really have a grudge against me.
Which is half of Australia. That's not a narrative. That's
Liam's narrative.
You need to wear you need to wear a hoodie, and then we can bring back the hooded villain.
I'm just thinking the only one person who actually had a serious grudge against me, which is narrative, was Deke, because I beat him with best death.
Yeah, let's not get into that. All right. Let's not get into that. So, guys, Sydney Slaughter is coming up soon. It's coming up in the second week of June.
Yeah, 8th and 9th of June. Yeah.
Great. And vice versa. If you're outside of Australia and you can't attend Sydney Slaughter, check Facebook, check TGA. There are lots of events that are narrative-driven events. If you're in Australia, this is definitely one of those must-attend events. If you've never been, you don't know what you're missing. It is a great event. Chris puts on an amazing experience, not just across the games, but he also has a pub quiz. He has things that happen throughout. Highly recommend. Liam and I have both gone every year now. This is about 3rd years.
It's our 3rd year out of 3. And first year was a ball. Second year was absolutely stunning. 3rd year is going to be an absolute amazing experience again. And I just haven't decided what army to bring yet. So
also in the chat, Andrew Big was just reminding us that his daughter's going to be there. So she played at CanCon. She beat me. Liam beat her. She's 14 years old. She is a gun. And if a 14-year-old girl, Beth, can come, you can come. So make sure you're coming because Beth's amazing.
Yes.
Are you?
was it last year was when we first met Beth?
Yeah, Beth actually sat around, watched her dad. I thought Andrew was a bad dad at first. I thought, why is this guy got his daughter hanging around at some games event for 2 days? She's just sitting there watching. I'm like, she must be the most bored person in the world. Then I got to know her. I'm like, this is amazing.
She would come around my table, like no matter where I was, and just be like, wow, you're shit. And I'm like, thanks. Like,
Oh, by the way, Andrew's just told us she's 12. So she's not even 14. She's 12. She's sass. She's awesome. And she's playing in this event. You need to come.
no excuse. But yeah, I just remember she was walking around last year, and then she was even more sassy at the trivia. She was like hardcore. I remember I swore, I'm like, I'm so sorry. And she goes, nah, you're pathetic. I'm like, wow, okay. Like,
And then you beat her up at CanCon.
Nah.
Chris, James, if people want to find you guys, they want to ask you questions about this event, maybe whether it's putting on an event in their community like this, whether it's about attending this particular event, Sydney Slaughter, where can they find you?
The best place is the Facebook page, which is Mortally Wounded Podcast. We've also got the website, which is mortallywoundedpodcast.com. I'm on Twitter, which is @woundedmortally. And James.
So yeah, I'm on Twitter. Sorry, Twitter and Instagram is @DukeCadric, KHADRIC.
Good news. It's both in the channel description below, so that both of their links are there.
One last question from Scrivo. Will there be any video coverage for Sydney Slaughter? And when I say Sydney Slaughter, he spells it with an SIDNEY. So I need to teach him how to spell Sydney. But
well, he taught us that they're not scenarios, they're battle plans. But Chris, will there be video?
Not known at this stage.
There'll definitely be Facebook.
There'll definitely be
like,
Facebook. Yeah, there'll
I'll
be
be
videos.
documenting the shit out of it. But yeah,
It's just whether or not we'll have a live stream.
The stream is up in the air.
Yet to be determined.
All right, stay tuned. If
buy tickets and there'll be a stream. Get on there.
Stay tuned. Maybe there'll be a stream. Boys, this has been a treat. Liam,
I need to message Scrivo to teach him how to spell because he just calls it Sinji Slaughter. Yeah, I'm going to teach him how to spell.
Liam, can we not start another fight internationally? Like, I've gone to England and made peace. I've been America. I've made peace. Please do not create international grudges.
But it's Scrivo. He loves us.
Really quick shout outs. There's been a couple of Aussie content creators who have put out some really good content. I'd see Doom and Darkness has put out a few battle reports since he's gotten back from Europe. He's got a premiere, so he's trying out a new YouTube feature. I think that kicks off on Friday. Jump onto that. I've seen a bunch of podcasts being released. I know Dwellers Below did a Border Wars list review, so check that out. I think they've just kicked off a Twitch channel. Check your podcast, boys. When are you putting on another podcast?
Probably over the next week or so.
Yeah, we'll be doing our Border Wars coverage episode in the next week.
And in the meantime, check their back catalog. They do good quality stuff, and they've been interviewing some interesting people as well. I haven't featured on their podcast though, so I feel like I don't know.
Maybe we'll do a Glimpse by episode soon.
Chris, you've been on my channel twice now, and I can't get an invite. Unbelievable. I even got this love in the back.
I think I just gave you one.
Look at that.
He just gave you an invite.
We'll do a Glimpse by episode soon and we'll get you on.
Yeah, you're just trying to you're just
It's
trying
now, I
to.
think.
You've got to stop playing Mixed Destruction, and then I'll get you on.
I haven't started yet. But speaking of Gloomspite, this Saturday I'm kicking off a show with Goon Boss, Seth Cook, and Donal, the Loon Boss himself. So we're going to do a faction focus. So stay tuned. Got a couple of cool shows. Bill Souza and two awesome dudes doing Flesh Eater Courts, and we've also got another show coming up. What am I doing? Another one. Can't remember. Oh, Fire Slayers. So lots of cool stuff coming out. Stay tuned on all your favorite Aussie content creators. And as always, under the show description is also the events coming up. So make sure you go to Sydney Slaughter. Do you reckon I should just like end the show with like this evil look? Sydney Slaughter.
Yes. Needs you.
Buy some tickets, guys. We'd love to see your beautiful faces. Lots of cool prizes too. So,
Yeah.
Except if you play Gloomspite, don't come. That's my
Gibbs already signed up,
tokens. That's my tokens.
Yeah, don't come if you're playing Sylvaneth or Flesh Eaters because they're my tokens. I don't know. Can I play 2 armies so I can get 2?
Well, you're not going to win with 1 army, so you'd probably be pushing it with 2.
Well, you know what? You're on like 2 days silence after that comment. Wow.
And also check out Cinderfall Gaming because our big, lovely Andrew Bigwood has been doing a show there for every fortnight. So check out that if you like more narrative. Guys, let's call it a wrap. I need to go to bed and start more 3D printing. Guys, it's been an absolute pleasure. You're always welcome here. Thanks very much.
Thanks for having us, Anthony.
Chris, Liam Post. 1, 2,
Liam Post.